My name is Danita Banks Sims, and I would have been rounding out my 37th year at the school. I've been in the same role the whole time, so that was Director of Development and Publications, and then a little bit of a name change towards the end where it was Development and Constituency Relations.
And I'm Carolyn Lett, and I've been at Roper School for 32 years. I started out at Roper School as the lower school secretary. Then I moved into being the assistant to the lower school director. I also moved into the role of campus coordinator. I moved into the role of diversity and community programs coordinator, also financial aid and scholarship coordinator, and then landed with director of diversity and community programs.
Perfect. Thank you. So do you guys mind starting back 32 years to what first brought you to Roper?
I came to Roper because I wanted to get back into the school systems. I had moved here back to my home, which is Detroit, but we lived in Lansing for about 10 years. And during that time in Lansing, I worked for East Lansing Public Schools. And at that time, my husband's job changed. We were moving back to Detroit. So I was pretty much a stay-at-home mom. But there was a time when I wanted to get back into the workforce. And so I thought about, temporary. I did go into working with temporary agencies, went back to corporate. I probably worked for every division of GM, as a contractual worker. And then I saw an ad in the paper while I was at a permanent job, now LTV Steel Company, in the paper for the Roper Schools. I had never heard of Roper School. And so as I'm talking to my staff member and asked her, I said, you heard anything about Roper School? She said, that's a wonderful school, Carolyn. That school is known all over the world. I'm thinking, really? I never heard of it. So anyway, the job that was advertised for was lower school secretary. So I had a lot of, experience there. And so I applied for it because really I wanted to get back into the school system. This was a time when you did interviews and they did it by committees. And so when I came to the lower school, my interview was not at the lower school, it was at the Birmingham campus. And it was a room full of people. And I'm wondering, okay, so it was a mixture, teachers and staff members and all women and all white women. And so, when I did the interview, Lorene Porter was the lower school director. She mainly asked the questions. No one else, I think maybe they might have asked a question or two. And so I'm thinking, okay, I don't think I have this job. So when I came home, Raymond asked me, he said, how did it go? I said, I don't think I got that job. And then Lorene called me the next day and offered me the position. And so, that was in 1993, in August of 1993 is when I started.
I love that story. Do you mind sharing what brought you to Roper?
Yeah, actually, so Detroit, we're by way of General Motors, not unlike Carolyn, when you're looking at industry. So we moved here just as Alex, my oldest, was being born. I think I was in my second trimester. And so I was home for a while, which made sense. I loved it. And then the two industries that I had been a part of, most recently, I was director of public relations for the symphony in Rochester, New York. And so we did that, rock and roll concerts, and then the traditional symphony presentations and the traveling Broadway shows and all the stuff I love. But obviously, there's entertainment venues. And so it was at night and I had a baby. So it's like, okay, I don't think I want to do that again. And the symphony here is, it's a great symphony as well, but I don't want to do that. But previous to that, I've been in broadcasting for several years and short stories. I then thought, okay, well, maybe I'll find something back in broadcasting. And my old general manager from New York knew Alan Frank. And he suggested that I go meet him. And so I did. It was really nice of Alan to meet me because I didn't know him. And he looked at my background. And at that time, he had just joined the Roper board and said, they're looking for a development person at the school where my boys go to school. So I thought, okay, well, I wasn't sure I wanted to do that again, done that a little bit, but not unlike Carolyn, I thought, okay, I'll just go see. And all of it was new. Again, we're new to the area. I had some family here, and Detroit is such an important city to the whole world. So it wasn't that. I just loved it already. But at any rate, I still felt like I needed to kind of spot check it. And I know, I think I probably, and you guys will relate completely, because I know for both of you, your children, nothing is more important. But I recall just so distinctly going in to spot check the school, and Alex was 9 months and old and in a little umbrella stroller. And I pulled up to the domes because I was so intrigued by what was happening. And the lower school director at that time came out and barely glanced at me, but immediately squatted down and grabbed Alex like that. And I thought, okay, well, this is a place that seems to care about children, and it might be a good match for me. So I went ahead and applied at that point. And kind of like Carolyn, it was a interesting interview process, but but at the end, it all worked out. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about your experience at Roper.
Yeah.
So do you mind sharing what have been some of the most memorable moments for you? And Danita, we can start with you.
Okay. Thought about this a little bit. I think for me, it was probably the 50th anniversary of the school. And actually, in that time, we had just come through, a challenging few years. And while what I kept hearing is that for so many people, the school, and I knew this, frankly, by this time, that the school enjoyed a really remarkable reputation internationally. And even sort of regionally, folks got it, how important the school was. But there was this sense, maybe because the last few years had been so troubling, that it was almost as if people were afraid to own why the school meant so much and means so much. So I recall at the time then we were approaching the 50th anniversary, and George and Anna Marie lived in California, and I had, excuse me, met them a few times already. But I remember that when we said we're going to celebrate this, Doug Winkworth was chair of the board by that point, and we had the 50th anniversary celebration. And I recall just glancing over and watching George and Anna Marie be led into that celebration. It was the room was filled. It was a ballroom, and I thought, oh well, these two people deserved this celebration, and it almost gave them a chance to also be reminded in the same community as well. And then when we sat down, there was a universal thing that happened, I think, right? So Robert Fulgham was our guest speaker that year. We did, and he wrote everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten. But people were sitting there waiting, all of this pomp and circumstance had happened. And he just went up to the podium and he started doing this. And people mimicked him, it was no matter how old you were at that point. And so it just felt universal. And that, I guess that for me felt like, oh, okay, we're all pausing to remember how important the school was. And then, of course, the chance for George and Anna Marie. And then the full circle of that moment was after they went back to California, I got the loveliest thank you note from George Roper.
Mhm.
And I thought, you are an international icon. You've changed thousands of people's lives, really. And his graciousness was something I will always remember. It was pretty powerful. So I think for me, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I even feel when I get the opportunity just to be in a space with Karen or Tom or Peter. Like they have that same essence, and
I
yeah,
do.
it's just a true gift. Really,
It's a
really
true gift.
wonderful.
Yeah. Wonderful man.
Well, Carolyn, I know that in all of your Roper journeys, there's no shortage of amazing memories. But do you have any that come to the top or rise to the top?
Well, as you say, so many, but I kind of echo. And Danita, thank you for that visual. I'm a visual person. The way you
Oh,
describe, George Roper, the occasion, who was
oh,
there, I could actually see it. That's how I
oh,
kind of do.
Carolyn.
And
Oh,
I never met George Roper, but how you describe him is what I've heard people say, about George. And most
Carolyn, yeah.
people who were here during the years of George and Anna Marie, back in the day,
Right.
respectfully called him Mr. Roper.
Yes.
Well, that's what I've heard from alums say, he wasn't George, he was
Yes,
Mr.
it wasn't
But,
George. You're
it's like not that he demanded it, but it
right.
was like they felt like that's what they should do, that they
Yeah.
should honor Mr. Roper and the kind of
Yeah.
person that he was. So I thank you for that.
Oh,
And as I think about, celebrations, well, the 75th. Now, this is a short one because I'm going to tell two different stories. So the first one was the hug that I received from Brian Stevenson.
oh,
What a gift. So we did the reception before we actually had the program over at the theater. And at the reception, David Feldman, it was standing with Brian Stevenson, and he was fingering after me. You want me? And he asked me to come over. He introduced me to Brian Stevenson. And Brian looked me in the eyes, and I've never had such a genuine hug in all my life. An
oh,
endearing
Carolyn.
hug, that hug that lets you know he's a people person. He
Yeah.
loves people. So, I have the picture, and I
Oh,
actually, the hug will never go away. I remember that. So that's my most memorable,
oh,
but also I think about when I wanted or introduced the Make a Splash Swim program. I had the conversation with Randall first about what
mhm.
it was and who it was for and how we could make that happen. And Randall brought it to an all school staff meeting. And he said, he introduced, because now here we are, going to use our pool.
Right.
He talked about what that program was going to be. And everybody in that audience, as the staff members, clapped. And then they started telling stories about
Oh,
who they knew who couldn't swim,
remember.
going back to, their childhood or going back to
Yeah.
kids. I mean, so here's, that tells us who we are as a community, that they were willing to embrace people who didn't look like them, kids who were, underserved. This is that justice piece where we
Mhm.
could make a difference. And they all said yes, in that particular moment. So that was really a reaffirming, and I won't forget that moment.
Those are two amazing ones, absolutely.
Oh, Carolyn. Yeah. Oh, gosh.
Well then, Carolyn, do you mind starting us off by sharing any particular traditions that you found are really impactful for our community and maybe one that may be your favorite?
Well, I'm thinking my most favorite different activities is with collaboration.
Yeah.
So that's the pieces that Danita and I overlap. And it's almost like you don't have one without the other. Because here it is, Danita was the unofficial but first diversity coordinator,
Oh,
director of diversity, because she had the connections with those students. Before we even had this role, before the role was even created, she had the role. And so kind of thinking about the events that she put in place, because not only was she looking at, particularly affinity group work, but also work throughout the community. So when I'm doing, Grandparents' Day, that was a development initiative. It truly is. But working so closely with the lower school and the programming and working on that together, it brings us together and it brings more people together into the mix, because then they understand this is about relationships. It's more than just, development. People think money and money rate. It's that. Sure. The school needs that, to be sustained, but you don't get that without building those relationships. So working with Grandparents' Day and another event that Danita works very closely, or development does with us and the students, is MLK Day. So MLK Day, that's a big collaborative piece. And I think what I love about it is that it's pretty much like you do Founders Day. You give the students the opportunity to take the leadership. So that's how we lead. Yes, we have a ad hoc committee, a committee that meets and talk about, the structure, but it's the students that make the plans. Love to have them involved. That's why I love it. I work with them. Whenever we're deciding what we're going to do, the pre-meeting before we have this celebration on the ceremony, we want to talk about what do we want to do for them, have available to them as leaders to bring in the community, families. We started out with just, it was kids to kids. It was students to students, and we invited other students in from other schools, but we extended it to families. Now, what do we do with that? So that's also a favorite event of mine. I think about what we created on the other campus, the Student Diversity Advisory Committee. Now, when I became director for both lower, middle, and upper, so Birmingham and Bloomfield, that happened 2008, 2009 school year, because before that, the role was divided. And I have to give a shout out to Karen Dye. Karen Dye was the first official diversity coordinator, college counselor / diversity coordinator. So she was that first one. And then when she left, the role was divided between Michelle Stamler and myself and 2 campuses. And then Randall decided that he wanted this role to be on par with the other directors, divisional directors. So then it became director of diversity. And when I first took on this role and moving over to Birmingham, because I was really stationed and my office was at Bloomfield, I wanted to know, in that community, what do you all need? Who are the population? Really, is the students the most important commodity in that building? So I wanted to know from them, this is your school. And if this school is really serving your purposes when it comes to diversity and inclusion, what would it look like? So just having them, a small group meeting with me, and it grew and grew and grew. We established some standard events that happen on campus, and they become, stationary throughout the years, the Mix It Up Days. That is a Southern Poverty Law Center. That is an initiative from them that is about inclusion and bringing kids together. You figure out how you want to do it. And we did that. We've been doing that since 2010. And actually, where you can send in what you do, and we were their, they call it a model school, role model school for those events. We received that twice. So very happy about that. And I cannot forget about the Make a Splash program. That's an initiative that, and when it began, it was a diversity initiative from the USA Swimming Foundation. And they talked about, how we have kids at risk, most at risk are African American, Hispanic, Latino children, because they do not have life-saving skills of swimming. And so we became a participating partner and have run that program successfully for 14 years. And over the 14 years, over 600 different children have come through that program. And it warms my heart when people come back to me. There was a parent who, during the 10th anniversary, which is the 75th at Roper, this parent wrote me and told me her kids go to Bloomfield schools and they're on the swim team. She said, but Miss Lett, they started with you. They started with your swim program every summer. And so, that's what our hope is, that we'll be able to make a difference in these children's lives. So those were just some of the, things that I think about, called Diversity Day. I didn't start. Hats off to Diversity Day. Michelle Stamler started it at the Birmingham campus, and I started it at Bloomfield. But now we're doing it. It's called Cultural Exploration Day. Because when I started doing Diversity Day at Birmingham, some kids would say, "Oh, that they thought that was all diversity was just on that day." No. So now it's Cultural Exploration Day. It's different cultures. Diversity is not just one thing. It's multiple things. And so I just love, being a participant in that and starting the multicultural leadership team.
Right.
This is where we really get to the core of sustainability so that DEI and J work is not forgotten. It's on the plate and on the minds and hearts of everyone else. And we have people who are in the community. It is an application process. We want people serious about taking on the leadership role. And then seed programs. So you said a few. I'm just.
Oh, these are remarkable.
Oh my goodness!
And what's so important is that the alums that this will touch and the community members that it'll touch may not be aware of some of these or how they shaped over the years. So I'm so glad that you were able to share you and I'm sure Danita will share the same sentiment. But those are really some of my favorite traditions too. I recently was asked by someone that was visiting the school what my favorite event was here, or tradition, and I couldn't help myself but say Grandparents' Day. Mind you, this was after Grandparents' Day, where some days it could be like, whoa, that was a lot to take on, but it is absolutely magical to see the intergenerational connections and that our kids, our teachers, everyone comes together to celebrate the community. It's just such a gift. So I definitely see how that resonates. And I know, Danita, it's very special for you too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
So
it.
do you mind sharing? And it's okay if we duplicate.
Okay, because I was gonna say, I don't know, and Carolyn, you could just go on and on about what she's given to the school. And what may not be on the list is that if we're any place, any moment, any intersection where the philosophy and the considerations of our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion is ever tested, then you want Carolyn let in the room. So whether it is, a family where someone is in genuine pain because of something that has happened, or a faculty member, there is no question who our pillar is, who the compass is for the school's philosophy, and it is Carolyn. And it doesn't go, if you were looking at all of obviously the tangible things, the many lives saved, the places would make a splash, all of that. But what has been remarkable through many heads, Carolyn, through many directors at both campuses, it didn't matter. And it was the refrain that you heard all along, that Carolyn had to be in the room. And the endless phone calls. I mean, I don't think people can fully appreciate. They know the circumstances where Carolyn has helped them, but to multiply that 100 times over, where a family is saying, my child needs to be at Roper. And through her remarkable discretion and care through the financial aid program, she made a way. She never forgot how important it was. And such regard and respect. I mean, that's what people deserved. And Carolyn just does it. So I feel so lucky to have partnered with her. I can't keep up for MLK, when when I was working with Mary Ann on Martin Luther King, when we would do the candlelight walk, Mary Ann would just look at me and she said, "So have you got the candles? Do you know what? Are we ready?" Okay. And that was about 7 o'clock that night. Yeah, we're ready. Okay. And then we'd be done. Oh my gosh, with Carolyn, you had to be ready by September to get ready for January to plan all of the entertainment, all of the workshops. And it's just incredible. It's just incredible. So we've worked on lots of things together, and Grandparents' Day, I knew I had my partner too, that, we would stand there and just welcome all of those happy, happy people. And I'm like both of you, it is the best day of the year because it's just unabashed, unconditional, everyone there for one purpose, and that is to celebrate. So that was great for me. I mean, I felt really honored to be able, to conceive of it and bring it to the school. So that was one of the things. Yeah, and it meant a lot personally to me, to be able to have that day and to have my own folks be part of it. And my father saying, "Oh, I drove 10 hours for a 1 hour celebration. I'd do it again tomorrow." Because it just meant so much. And next thing I know, they've got a million kids just following them around. They loved it. So that was probably a highlight. It had been, when I look back too, which isn't generally said, but I happen to believe that the school is very philanthropic, that I don't think you could find more folks who are more generous and care so deeply, long before I got there, and trying to execute a vision of the founders of George and Anna Marie. And they were great, and George and Anna Marie stewarded that really well. It just happened that by the time I got there, there'd been nearly 35, 40 years where there was no new construction. And the school certainly had worn through many of the facilities they were using. So it's been a particular point of pride to collaborate with so many people to build new buildings, to finally have a gym, to have, that belonged to us, to have a space to fully utilize the Birmingham campus. And then by extension, to find ways to honor people that meant so much, but in a way that was sort of like Roper. So, as an example for iconic folks like Jimmy and Vi, to have African-American couple that gave so much to people. And while some people knew them to know now that their own legacy is sort of, permanently available for all of us to celebrate. So though that meant a lot. And then sort of kind of growing the endowment and and probably the Roper Gala too, because we didn't think we were going to repeat it. It just felt like, oh, we can honor people in our own community who've done so much, a little unheralded, some not so much, as well as iconic people from around the world. So that also reminded Roper folks, our community, of just how special the school was. So the thought of Carolyn with Brian Stevenson just filming Carolyn, it's a good thing that this you can't see, because I was really starting to tear up because I never saw it. But what I have heard over the years are what those occasions, excuse me, have meant for people. Nothing I saw, just knowing the connections were happening, later was a gift. And we were fortunate to bring all kinds of people to the school. But one of my favorite moments from that, actually, I was thinking about all these amazing women, especially that we brought. But was Norma Carter, who, by that time Norma had retired, and we had done the Golden Apple Awards for a while at that point. But Norma really helped shape fine arts and dance and everything, and fencing, and she was really something else. And Rosa Parks had just gotten her award, and then here comes Norma. So Norma comes up to the stage, and Carolyn will appreciate this. And she said, "Oh, thank you for this wonderful award." She goes, "Oh, I see, it's just a symbol of a golden apple." Well, I think she was honored, but it just cracked me up because it was so authentic. So I think, without going on too much, those might be some of my, feeling like I, sort of made a contribution in ways that are kind of lasting.
Unbelievable contribution.
Oh, wow.
On behalf of both of you.
Shani.
For anybody that's listening, I say, it's our Danita. I'm honored to be on the same screen because I told you, Shani, they don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from Danita. Honestly, Danita is the rock star, the iconic. My granddaughter, she would come and do summer camp, and then she would go up and see Danita. She said, "I saw Danita today." You think, she saw Beyonce or somebody, but she saw Danita today. And she, she
Carolyn, no.
excited. Because all you have to do, Danita brings you in, that warm smile. All the things she does with grace, and she does with modesty. So the things, if you are listening, people, Danita made a whole list here, but you might miss it because she's so modest when she speaks about it. These are grandiose things that Danita has established inside of our community, and they will remain that. And she started it. And some of these things I know weren't always easy. You kind of think, okay, because it's always been, you think it's always been here, but not always. It had to have a start. And sometimes you don't have the support that you need. And then you fight for it, and then it moves forward. So all those events, are very impactful, certainly in students' lives. And you talk about the gala, students were introducing, the guest. And so, Danita made sure that people played a part. People came, the students came, they were the entertainment, they were the orchestra, they were this, that. I mean, it was a whole community. So many beautiful pieces. What Danita didn't mention, and I think that she should have, is to think about how you really reached out to your people in your affinity group in the community. The Black Parent Group was started because of Danita's really initiative and thinking about it. It was a year that Friends School had closed, and some of the students were coming over to our campus. Our campus is spread out at the Bloomfield campus, and parents were saying they saw one another, but they didn't know each other. And they came in to Danita's office and met with Danita and I, and they wanted to know if they could do something themselves, just Black parents, bring Black parents, permission is what they were asking for. Would they be doing something wrong if they just wanted to be with their people? Would that be all right? And Danita said, not only is it okay, but we're going to help you. And Danita reached out actually Deshanna Martin, who's on the board, worked with Danita, and she was the one who hosted that first Black parent gathering. And out of that now grew the Black Parent Affinity Group. I also think about when I realized or talked about realizing that Black girls needed support too. So I said, Danita and I talked about that. We called a meeting and reached out to Black parents from lower school, middle, and upper, and saying, you have to help us with this if you want it. But here's an idea that we will put in place. And out of that grew Black Girls Rock, still existing today. And also thinking about the boys mentoring. So now again, we're trying to think about, well, what do people need?
Oh, yeah.
And I said, Danita, you think Glenn? She went to Glenn. So Glenn also, he got
Wasn't doing
grafted
anything.
in. He got grafted in. He became a Black boys mentor. And Leslie's husband, Ron, participated.
Yes.
And then we had one of our parents, Mr. Thomas, he came in and
Yes.
did that as well.
Oh.
And they hosted it at their home. Danita's done that. She's hosted the Black girls at her home and the Black boys. I mean, so you see, that person that quietly walks through, but gets things done. That's who Miss Danita Banks Sims is.
Oh gosh, Carolyn.
And so modest about her kids are doing what, see, apple doesn't fall, the apples don't fall far from the tree. And you have to ask her because she won't, reveal willingly, but her kids are doing wonderful things. But it's because they have a mother and father like Glenn and Danita. So I'm getting teared up myself, just thinking
Carolyn.
about being in the presence of greatness. And that's
oh gosh, Carolyn. Oh no. Oh God. Well, and Shani, I knew if my kids were going to be able to emulate folks whose core was unquestioned, then I was going to the Lett family. So Tisha, Carolyn's daughter, was our amazing babysitter. She was wonderful, and the kids were so little, and we were so happy. Then Carolyn became like family, and then Corey would come, which was perfect for Carter. We were so happy. And Corey, we have to go out of town. Okay, I'll just come watch the house. So he'd come and stay. But look how remarkable. I mean, we were just so lucky. And I don't know if it's divine intervention, but to have been there and part of this is why this celebration feels like so much joy for me, is that I can be there with my sister. Because Carolyn is just, I think both of us would be sitting in our offices sometime and a little something would go off and physically and say, hey, I haven't seen Carolyn. in a day or two, and Carolyn would do the same, and we'd walk over because we'd just feel this deep, powerful connection. And Carolyn didn't mention, I'll stop, probably, Shani, you could have reversed and asked us each other's questions.
No,
but the other thing that having us be such an integral part of the People of Color conferences. And so Carolyn, you may talk about that soon. I know it changed my niece's life. It changed Madison's life to be with Carolyn, to have gone to that conference, to come back and participate in all the ways both of you can. And then Shani, when you asked Madison to be on that panel, it was remarkable, but it was life-changing. She got to be who she really was meant to be in that way, giving herself. So, and Carolyn did that for countless kids. So and what they brought back. So I just can't say enough. I'm so grateful.
Like we've touched on some of the impact and legacy questions. But what's really important, and I'm working obviously with Encore, which is our group of former faculty and staff or retired faculty and staff. And it's so important to recognize all of the contributions that they have set in place, but then also kind of really focus, mentor, and share advice with future educators. And so my question would be, what advice would you share or offer to future generations of educators, specifically those of color? Carolyn, do you mind if we start with you?
Oh, I would say what I want people to do is to be their authentic self, but also know that you matter. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't, and they may not say that verbally, but by their actions. Stand in who you are, be true to yourself, and also there are times when you have to help others see who you are. We earn everything that we receive. Nothing's given to us. And so I want people to know that they are valued, They are a valuable asset and they need to know their own self-worth. Also, ask for what you need. Sometimes staff of color have told me we don't really get the pathway through. We don't get the advancements because no one's really helping us like they help, the other people. So I'm just saying, seek the help. It doesn't always have to be inside of Roper. Most of our mentors and people that we look to as advisors are outside of our community. They may not even be in our same role, may not be in our same field, but you're looking for that person who's going to affirm you. It's like what affinity group work is for. It's about affirmation. It's affirming who you are. It's nurturing who you are. And it's also supporting. And I hope that our staff coming behind us realize that that will be true for them. Find that gem. When I came, Danita was the only other. Danita and Roberta Jones were the only people of color on campus. And actually, I saw Danita. She came down to the domes and came through and introduced herself and so forth. And I'm just thinking, well, I walked in the domes. That was where my office was. I see the bust of Dr. King. I think this place must be all right. So seeing that bust, but no other people of color. Not at that point when I first walked in the door. Then I see Danita. I'm happy. I see Roberta, and I'm happy. But see how we form that. I say to anybody coming behind us, form that network, that brotherhood, that sisterhood, that sorority and fraternity of sorts that you find inside of Roper or outside. Whatever is going to sustain you to be able to stay in your truth, be yourself, and continue to grow.
Absolutely. And something that Carolyn always says that I think is so important for current and future families to know is that you are a full member of the community. It's not a probationary status. It's not any kind of conditional participation. So I hope everyone will be fully engaged. And I think the one thing that sometimes when I, speak with Roper alums later, because I think those students, as you guys probably know, that fills me up more than anything to have the privilege of being and witnessing their lives, is that some of them will come back and say, I regret I didn't try forensics, or I regret I didn't try fencing or the rest. And it's not, I don't, have any kind of sort of well, I do regret on their behalf, but I don't blame them because, it's hard to push through your comfort zone. So and the time goes quickly, but you do want to be able to say, I tried that. And I wish that they knew that it's okay to try it, might not like it. It's okay to fail at it if that's, and to go again. And as Carolyn was saying, that other part of people seeing you. So if someone's not seeing you, and unfortunately, but the place is amazing, but we don't escape what we know are societal norms and restrictions or how people see us. So someone may not see that in you or another Roper student. And I know, and Carolyn similarly has done this, whenever we had the Golden Apple or whether it's an assembly or whatever, we really wanted to make sure there was representation. So that one African-American student who just comes in, does their work, may not cause any kind of ruckus or whatever, who's not noticed, deserves to have their moment. So if they're not going to give it to you, you're going to do that for yourself, and just not, sort of be relegated to the things that people expect of you. You get a chance to find that for yourself. Yeah, so that would be my advice. And I agree as well about finding support, amongst each other. And what I know Carolyn feels the same way, but it's so heartwarming to go to both campuses, and to see you, Shawnee, with Paige and Lori and Leslie and say, oh, this is great. Just, right there in Camellia, that's wonderful. It's amazing. And the other campus. So when I came, Ernestine was there and Sanders, and she was just, kids loved her and she's just an amazing educator. And as you guys know, not that I'm ever cool enough to do this, but I do find my way to connect with people. But, you get the nod when you're at the grocery store, which we always do, wherever you are. When you see
Yeah.
somebody else in the tribe and you're like, okay, I got you.
Mhm,
You know, it's so nice to have that.
mhm.
And now it's just really great to still, you know, to see it at the school. It's great. Yeah.
Those are really really great advice and also really great reminders, because I think intuitively we know all of this, but we just have to practice self-care, reminding ourselves that
Yeah.
those are things that we need to do and that we're capable of it. So
Yes.
that's great. Thank you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I see, this is why I was excited to just open it up, because we didn't have to stick to these questions. When I look at them, I'm like, we talked about that. That works really nicely. Oh, this is always fun. So I always start any of my alumni meetings, both with the Alumni Leadership Council as well as the Bridge, with kind of just a fun opening question. And so that can range from, what's your favorite coffee drink, or are you a tea or coffee lover, or what is one superpower that you wish you could have? Those are kind of like an essence of what they look like. So this one seems fun. If you could describe your Roper journey in 3 words, what would they be? So this one, I know it's not always easy for us to put all of that into 3 words, but do you guys have any idea of what those would be? Carolyn, do you want to start?
Yes. Well, for me, I wrote down transformative.
Mhm.
I've been a change person. I came in thinking I was a PYT. I did. I thought I came in young and was not going to stay there, but a couple of years out, really, I was a millennial before the millennial. And I'm not saying in any job, but just adventurous. Go here a couple of years, here a couple, and I've been there 32 years.
Okay.
And it has transformed me in so many different ways. So transformative, impactful,
Mhm.
and enduring. My
Oh,
experience there will live on and continue to endure.
wow.
Those are amazing. Yeah,
Beautiful, Carolyn.
that's it. I love it.
That's beautiful. Oh, well, and I took a moment too. I looked, I thought about it. It's a great question, Shani. And for me, my 3 were enlightenment, intellect, and joy. Yeah, I think I can't measure what it has meant to have people, Roper people in my life. And I know it's helped shape the rest of our lives. And like you guys, and I know Carolyn, because we're so lucky, I think, about all the people, Carolyn's family, what it has meant to the whole Roper fabric to have them participate, from alums to camp. Oh my gosh, Carolyn, it's amazing seeing all family members that make a splash, welcoming guests. You just made that happen. And what matters more than your kids? So
Mhm.
that part, I knew the school would, again, after that first exchange, welcome my children, and I knew, but I didn't know they would love them.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that I found out, good or bad, they love them. So that's the joy that I feel like I can take with me
Mhm.
from the school. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I'd like to include are just some parting words. And I know that there's a lot of opportunities the next couple of weeks to share those, but I don't even like to say this, but if you guys don't mind sharing, what we also hope to do with this video is not only have it for our Black Affinity alumni group, or in the entirety of our alumni community, but also serve as some archival purposes. I think it's so important. And as we sit here and have this opportunity today, I think in some fashion, I'd love to also do this with maybe Deb Villette, Julie Nimchek,
Oh, great
different
idea.
kinds of Kennedy, because what we know is there's so much that goes unsaid, right? That you guys have done so many amazing monumental things, whether that's, in the classroom, or, Deb starting things like the walkathon or jump ropers. Those are things that I want to institutionally share and cherish for years to come. And so this is just kind of the first step, but I thought it would be really nice if you guys don't mind sharing sharing some parting thoughts. Nita, do you mind starting?
Oh, no, not at all. Um, I've always felt fortunate that I believe I've had a chance to witness the strength of African Americans in my lifetime. And maybe there may be some folks who, just by virtue of privilege, might want to be something else. I have never, ever for 1 second wanted to be anything else. And I feel so lucky to feel that way. So it was so important to be able to be in an environment, and again, back to my own children, to be surrounded by young African American students who embodied that for me. And I will always feel so grateful, I think more than anything else, as I'm getting closer to this next phase, is gratitude for them. African American alumni are very special. And the ones that I got to know personally, the ones that were great role models for my children and for each other. And then the ones that I came to know later, like there were folks that are my age, through, as you know, Shani, all the great work that you've been doing with alumni, that I've come to know and I care so deeply about. And I wasn't there with them, but there's just such a great through line. So I will always be grateful that I got a chance to be in that community and to witness them. Yeah, that's been such a privilege. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks, Danita.
Uh-huh.
Carolyn?
Beautiful, Danita. I couldn't say that better. I
Mhm.
think, you know, for parting words and whoever's listening or seeing this podcast, to think about you've been given a heritage, you've been given a gift by your parents bringing you to Roper. Sometimes you don't realize when you have gifts. You know, you don't realize it till an experience come up and you realize how you've been prepared better, able to interact on a different level, being more accepting, whatever that might be. But you have to first of all realize you have a gift, but also love yourself.
Mhm.
And that love, you know, keeps enduring. When you love yourself, then you can give to others. So just, you know, the world that we're living in is impacting us. Inside of Roper, outside of Roper, we can't help but be, you know, affected by it. But we get to choose. You know, oftentimes my words have been, and people in the Roper community have heard me say it, you do not have control over what people say to you, but you have control of how you will let it affect you. So
Mhm.
that's in any way of life, wherever you are, what role you're in, helping your children. I just say, you know, think about where you are now, how you're growing, and what path you're on. But I love that Danita said joy. Remember your joy, because sometimes we forget about that. We're so, you know, bothered and troubled by other things. But that joy is life to, you know, sustaining you and to your heart. So those are my departing words.
Carolyn.
You guys are just amazing.
Oh,
I will be ever so grateful for this opportunity to be in this space with the two of you.
And thank you for offering this.
yes, absolutely.
Right.